Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another tutorial of Salesforce Makes Sense. This is Imanshu and we are continuing our Lightning Web Components masterclass. In the last tutorial, we understood how to basically call Apex methods using the wire service, and then we also understood what imperative methods are. Right now, we have looked at wire, we have looked at Apex, but now there are some scenarios that we need to be cautious about, and we need to know how sequence and how ordering works, and how can you use what kind of feature in case something comes up around this use case. One of those use cases is, what if you have multiple wires? When I say what if you have multiple wires, I mean that let's say you want to use 2 wire methods or 3 or 5 wire methods to get 2 or 3 or 5 different kind of information from the database. So what happens in that case? Right, so in this case there are 2 different scenarios we are going to discuss. First one, if the wire methods are independent, that's the first one. You can call them as is, like you can just have 2 wire methods. It's not like you have a hard and fast rule of just having 1 wire method. All right, so what we'll do is we'll go to our Salesforce org. Let's do LWC masterclass, and then here I already have the component set up here, right? I'll just wait for it to open. I'll just go ahead and say edit page, and I'll move this guy on the right side. All right, so let's just move this so that the page is ready for us to use. And what we are going to do is, for the first use case, we are going to have 2 independent wire calls, meaning I'll just get some data from, let's say, the case object, and I'll get some data from the task object. Let's do 2 of these. Okay, if I were to just go to developer console, select ID from case, let's say limit 5. All right, I have 5 records, and I want ID from task. I have 5 records, let's say. Okay, so I have these 5 records for task and case. These are 2 independent calls that I want to make from my Lightning web component to Apex through wire service, and I want to get that information. That's the first line that's written here. All right, and if the wire methods are independent, what does independent mean? It means that you don't need the output of the first wire method or the second wire method in the other one. Basically, you need 2 different information which are mutually exclusive. All right, so now we'll go to VS Code, and before we move on, I'll just go ahead and commit this to my Git. Right, so this was our last tutorial. I'm just going to go ahead and commit all of this to Git. I'll just say state changes, and I'll just say imperative method with filter, or basically input params. All right, I'll just commit it, and I'll say sync changes. So this has gone to Git, and you can actually check it on the LWC masterclass branch. Right, I have my Apex org created already here, and I just want to just check if an update is available. I'll just say sfdx update, and let's see. Yeah, there is an update available from 2.99 to 2.100, and I'm just going to get this updated so my extensions and everything work on the latest. All right, great. So I have my system and my org set up. While this happens, we are going to go ahead and anyway get started. Now, what do we want to do? We want to do wire services, right? So to just go ahead and start with it, I'll just say create Lightning component, and I'll call it independent wires. All right, that has created my LWC component, and in this component, what I want to do is I want to have 2 tables, right? 2 tables, one that shows the cases and the other one that shows the tasks. So what I'll do, I'll just create a Lightning card. I'll say my 5 cases. This is just a dummy example, so just I'm putting things more static. All right, and here what I'll do is I'll put a template, and I'll say if true, and here I'll have a variable. All right, so let's say I found cases. That's a boolean variable that I'm going to create. Okay, and while I'm doing that, it is a good practice to immediately define it here. So I'll just say found cases is equal to default, it is false. Similarly, I'll have a found tasks is equal to false. Okay, this will define whether or not to show the data table that I'm wanting to create for the table of the 5 records. All right, great. So for a table, I'm just going to put a for each, right? So that would basically be template for each, and then for item, right? These are the 2 things, and then I have to iterate over it. I'll just keep a tag, and because I need a tag, I'll have to give a key, right? This is all that we have learned. Now for each, I have to define a list here. Let's say this is my case list. All right, and for every item, I'll just call it, let's say, case. Okay, and then I can simply say case dot origin. All right, and then I can have more attributes here. So case dot origin, and then case dot, we'll just check what else do we have. We have case dot origin, case dot subject, what else, let's say case dot description. We'll get these three things. All right, and then we are going to do the same for our tasks. So I'm just going to copy this blindly, paste it here, and I'll say my 5 tasks. The variable should be found tasks. If it finds it, only then it will show it. This variable will be task list. Instead of typing, always make sure that you're taking it from here. Now I have not defined the case list, so let me just define case list and task list. So this is how I'm just preparing my JS also, right? And then this will basically be called task. There's some issue here. What is that issue? This should be task. I'll just say task dot subject, task dot activity date, I believe, and then task dot description. All right, what is the problem here? Case is not a valid identifier. What's wrong for item case? So I'll just say case rec maybe. All right, and I'll just use this case rec as the variable. All right, cool. So the HTML looks neat. We have set up the base framework, and now what I want to do is I actually want to get the information from a wire method and basically have that called from my JS and connect to the Apex. So to be able to call a wire method, I need the Apex controller created first, right? So I'll just create a controller that would basically be called independent wire controller. That's my Apex class, and in this Apex class I simply need 2 methods. One method is basically for getting 5 cases, and the other one is to get 5 tasks. All right, so I'm just going to say public static. What is it going to return? It is going to return a list. What type of list? Let's say case. Okay, and I'll say get cases. There's no input parameter that I want to send, because I'm just giving you an idea of how to do independent wire calls. Okay, and just so that you know what kind of problems or what kind of issues that could come up, and is it allowed, and what is allowed, just that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm just going to go completely blind here, that no errors are going to come, so no try catch and all, but always make sure that you keep that practice. Select ID from case, limit 5. All right, and around the ID I also want to get what I have: origin, subject, description. So I'll say subject, origin, description. Cool, that's my cases method. That's my first method. My second method is going to be very similar, but this is going to return tasks. So I'll say get tasks. All right, this is going to return a list of tasks, and here instead of origin I just need activity. The spelling is wrong. Activity date. Always make sure that check all the spellings and everything, so that it does not create a problem later. This is basically task. Done. Let's try to deploy it first of all, and let's see if it deploys fine or not. So there are some precautionary measures you should always take before writing too much of code. So if I deploy, I'll get all the compilation errors. So there's no compilation errors. Amazing. Now the next thing I would like to do is I simply want to run this on the developer console. Does it return what we want? Let's see. See, subject, origin, and description, but there's no description, so that's fine. And then what about the task? Let's check it if this also works as expected or not. It does. All right, so we have this information here. Perfect. So 5 records are returning from this method, 5 are returning from this method. My Apex class is created. Is there something that's missing here? Yes. What's missing here is the prerequisite. You have to make sure, because you're using it on your LWC side, you have to make them Aura enabled cacheable equal to true. Cacheable equal to true is needed because you are wanting to wire them. If it was imperative, you did not need to, but for wire you have to. Okay, so the prerequisite is done on the Apex side. Let's deploy it again. And deploys fine. Perfect. Deploys fine. The next thing that we need to do as a prerequisite here is to import them. Correct. We'll have to import them. All right. So I'll say fetch cases from, where do I want it from? I want it from the Salesforce Apex module, and then from independent wire controller. Don't need to type everything every time. Always copy paste here, and I'll say the method name is basically get cases. All right, and then the second thing is import fetch tasks, which is basically the get tasks, right? And here I'll say fetch tasks. You can choose to keep the same name like your method name for the consistency, or you can give it a better name if the method is not of a better name. Okay, just make sure that you do that. Now you have done both the prerequisites. My Aura enabled cacheable true methods are created. My HTML is set up, and I have imported my Apex controllers on my JS file. Now the JS file needs to actually call the wire methods, right? So the JS file needs to call these two methods. Now what is the syntax? Remember what I told you, because you're going to wire it, you need the annotation wire. Now when you say wire, you have to tell the system that I want to use wire from your module. So you have to give that on the import. Perfect, even that's done. Now when you do wire, you tell what do you want to wire. I want to wire the fetch cases method, right? And then this is going to return you something which is basically case list, or let's say the wired cases, right? This will have two parameters, remember, data and error, correct? You'll have these two things, and these would be within input params, so curly braces. That's how it is, right? If you had input params, you would have to give it here before the callback, but this is the handler part. We've already discussed it, right? In this handler, what do you want to do is basically here. If you receive data, you do something. If you receive error, you do something else. Makes sense? So far so good, right? And now if you see, the fetch cases is now not gray because now it is being used here. Same way we are going to do the other one, but let's fill this up. If I have the data, I'll say this dot case list is equal to whatever is coming from the data attribute. What is coming in the data attribute? List of cases. Perfect. All right. When I have the data, I'll say this dot found cases is equal to true. That's when the module will show itself if I mark the boolean as true. That's how the template if true works here, correct? And if there's error, I'll say this dot case list is undefined. Very simple, undefined, and I'll not show my section, which is already false, so I'm not setting it to true. All right. And if you want to do some sort of error handling, you can do it here by using the error.body.message that contains the message. Okay, we have already done this many times. Cool. We'll do the same for get tasks. So I'll just say fetch tasks. I'll say wired tasks, and then here I'll say this should be the task list that is returned, and that data should be stamped to the task list, and found task should be true. So you see, when you do copy paste, you have to ensure all your references are correctly mapped, or else there might be one mistake here and there. It will mess up, and you'll not be able to find what is going wrong. So looks neat, done very quickly, but solves our purpose. And what we have been able to do is call two wire methods. Okay, I'm going to say deploy. I'll deploy this one more time just to be sure that I deployed the latest version. Let's wait for both of the things to deploy. Deployed, the independent wires LWC is created, and the controller is also deployed. And another thing, for some of you, you ask me that if I deploy from here, this button right here, and if I deploy from here, this button right here, or I deploy in the folder level, this button right here, all of the things do the same thing. They deploy the entire folder. Okay, so you can do it from here, you can do it from here, you can do it from here. All right, for LWC, it's going to deploy the entire folder. All right, now I've missed one thing, which is the meta file. Okay, for those of you who know my routine, I do that first, but I just wanted to do it now. So targets, and then target, and this is basically lightning home page or app page, right? What are we on? We are on the home page here, so that's fine. We'll put it on the home page. I'll say deploy one more time, please. And this is deployed. We'll come here and I'll say edit page, and I should find my method called, my LWC called independent wires, and I'll just drop it here, and I'll say save. Okay, this is saved. Let's go back, and now we should be able to see information or data. So data is showing up, but somehow the records are showing up, but there's just dots here. Where are our records? Which means there's some issue. Okay, so now we'll have to start debugging. So found cases, found task is true, which is why the full thing is showing up. That's one. The other thing is my controller has the information and it is returning limit 5. Perfect. The wire method is having case list and task list. Okay, the data is being returned here, which is also good, right? What we can now do is we can put debug logs, all right, or the console logs. So first I'll put a log here. that what is the data I've received, and because data is of type object, list is internally an object, right? I have to stringify it if I want to see the response on the browser console. So I'll say json.stringify, and I want to see what is the data. Spelling should be correct. Let's check. And what I do is, just to find my information, I put my name in the console log so that I can filter it properly. Sometimes I do that. Okay, I'll just put my name and deploy. And if I want to check both the wire methods, let me just put this here as well, and I'll see Himanshu case, Himanshu task, and I'll say deploy. Okay, let's see what data is coming from the wire methods and whether both of our wire methods are actually running or not. So I'll go to the inspect mode, I'll close this section, go to the console here, clean this up, refresh. Okay, now when I do a refresh, when the component loads, I should see Himanshu. Yeah, you see Himanshu case is showing up information here. That's one. Let's go to JSON formatter. Okay, you can find this online. I'll just put it here, format and beautify, and I have ID, subject, origin. Perfect. Description has not come up. Why? I've included it, but it does not have a value, which is why it has not come up. Okay, it does not have a value. And then for task, what do I have? Let's check. Let's open another JSON formatter and let's paste it here. And I have ID, subject, and activity date. For those of which who have a description, the field has come. Perfect. Now, if I were to go back to my browser and I see that these dots are there, but the record is not giving the information. Now, what could be the problem? Let's go to the HTML. I have the case list. Let's check. Case list. Case list. All right. Same variable. And then task list. Task list. Okay. While I was searching the variable, I already found the mistake. You see, what have I done? I have given li tags, but I have gave all the mappings on the key field. That cannot be. This is not the way. You have to put it in the actual value for the li tag. It is not the key. It has to be here. That's the mistake I made. Okay, it should not be here. All right, this will come out and it will go here. Sorry, let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this, and then let's get rid of this. Okay, done. Now I'll just take the case.origin and then description. So I need subject, origin, description. Perfect. And then I'll do the same for the second guy. Same mistake has been done here. I've only assigned it to the key, but key is not needed for the value. You'll have to put it within the tag. So here, subject, activity date, and then description. Okay, the only reason the first one is giving an error is because it should have a key, right? Now what I'll do is I'll just have a UL tag, unordered list, and this I'll give a key, and the key is nothing but the ID of the record, because that is always going to be unique. Okay, I'll put all of these li tags inside the unordered list. That's plain HTML. Okay, UL and li. You can always use SLDS lists and grids and all of that, but this video is not for that purpose, and we have already done a lot of exercises around that. I'll just quickly indent everything, and here I'll again give the key as the task_rec.key, which is just task.key. Okay, and this should be task.id. Done. And see, I made one more mistake. This should not be case rec, this should be task. So it would have failed, but we already found it. Save. Now it looks a bit better, and hopefully it should work now. Let's see. Deployed, module has changed, refresh. I can close this section. Only if error comes, I'll show it. And now we are able to see all the records. All right. It's not properly indented or aligned. We can go ahead and do that exercise, but you get the primary idea, right? You can just put the tags, and you can put padding and margin, but the idea is clear that you had two wire methods, you called them independently. There was no dependency from both of them, which means you can call 5, you can call 10 wires. You need record type info, you need object info, you need apex info, you need another apex info. Call your wire methods and get that on the page load if you have to get it. Okay, but whatever you can delay later, as in to improve the performance of the page load, if there's something that you don't need immediately, you should not choose to go with the wire. Okay, have wire only for things that you need immediately on the load of the page. Make sense? Awesome. In the next tutorial, we'll look at the second use case, which is where, what if you have a wire wherein the second wire requires data from the first wire? That's what we'll look at. This was independent. In the second one, we'll look at dependent wires. All right, great. I will see you in the next one. Bye.